All right, so this is 34-3, and we're going to be graphing one cycle. Now just remember from the lesson, the new thing that has been added was phase shift and how the graph is shifting to the left or to the right, or we can also call that the horizontal shift. So let's start with number one. So I have negative sine y equals negative sine of x minus pi thirds. So examining this, I know that there's a reflection over the x. I know that this is going to be my sine parent graph. So it's going to look something like that, where my important values are going to be. And because of that minus pi thirds, I know I have a horizontal shift. So let's find those new values, right? We have to do our value box. So we take this x minus pi thirds, and we put that between 0 and the original period. So I need to get x by itself. So I add pi thirds to everything. So I'm going to get pi thirds is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to. Now to do this 2 pi thirds, we have to find the common denominator. So that's going to be 3 over 3. And so that's going to now give us 7 pi thirds. So now I can do the value box. Here's pi thirds. Here's 7 pi thirds. If I add the ends together and divide by 2, so pi thirds plus 7 pi thirds, that's going to give me 8 pi thirds divided by 2. And then multiply, so you get 8 pi 6, and then the 8 and the 6 reduce, and so I'm going to get 4 pi thirds. Now I need to add these two together and divide by 2, so that's going to give me 5 pi 6. And then I need to add these over here together and divide by 2, so 4 pi thirds plus 7 pi thirds all over to 11 pi 6. Now that's kind of weird scaling it. So finding the common denominator, everything, that would be 2 pi 6. This would be 8 pi 6. And this would be 14 pi 6. So now everything's scaled into 6. It's much easier for me to go through and graph it. So now I need to do that. I need to go through and I need to graph this. So we'll say every tick is a pi 6. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So the first one was 2 pi 6, and so I need to look at my parent graph. So it starts at the center line, so 2 pi 6. Then my next value is at 5 pi 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's going to be about right here. But instead of going up, there's a reflection, so now it's going to go down. So normally, let's just say here's my amplitude 1 and negative 1. Normally it would go up, but because of the reflection, it's now going to go down. And then at 8 pi 6, it's going to cross again. So the third value, it's going to cross. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then the next value normally goes below, but because of the reflection, it's going to go up. So 9, 10, 11. And then the last is 14 pi 6, which is going to be right here. And so this is going to be the one cycle of my graph. Now, just to make things a little easier, just make sure you label it. It's kind of hard to write this small. But all of that does need to be labeled. 5 pi 6, 6 pi 6, etc. All the way through. It needs to be labeled. But that's going to be our one cycle. Now, if I were to, let's say, describe it, I would still have to say the amplitude is 1, right? Because the amplitude is 1, right? It's -1, but the negative means reflection, so you're still left with a 1. My period, that's going to be 2 pi over b. Well, there's no b. It's just 1. So my period is still 2 pi. My phase shift, or my horizontal shift, is always the first value in this value box because it shifted from 0 to that pi thirds. So my phase shift is going to be pi thirds. And so my domain would be -infinity to +infinity, and my range is going to be from -1 to +1. Let's look at another one, and I'm just going to kind of set it up for us. So this one now has a vertical shift. So we have to be aware of that as we're kind of working through this. So it does have a vertical shift. My amplitude is 3. It's cosine. So my parent graph for cosine, doing a quick sketch of that, should look something along those lines. And it's kind of like enough. I know that I'm going to have a horizontal shift or a phase shift, and I know that I'm going to have a period change. So everything's happening with this problem here. So now, kind of working through this, let us take whatever is on the inside of our function. We put that between 0 and our original period. And our original period for cosine is 2 pi. Now I need to get x by itself. So I'm going to add 2 pi to everything. So I get 2 pi is less than or equal to 3x, which is less than or equal to 4 pi. Divide everything by 3. So 2 pi thirds is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 4 pi thirds. And so now I can start my value box. There's my first value, which is also my horizontal shift. There's my last value right there, which is 4 pi thirds. So now I need to add these together. And so you're going to get 6 pi 6. Or I could, maybe I can write it in thirds, so that would be 3 pi thirds. I don't know how I'm going to compare it just yet. Do it to this one. 2 pi thirds plus 3 pi thirds all over 2. So that gives us 5 pi 6. Pi thirds plus 3 pi thirds. That's going to give us, 5 pi 6. And then over here, 7 pi thirds. So 3 pi thirds plus 4 pi thirds all over 2. That gives us 7 pi 6. So it looks like I'm going to have to make everything into 6. So for this one, this would become 4 pi 6. And then this one right here is going to become 8 pi 6. Which is really nice because now, if you look, this is going to be 4 pi 6, 5 pi 6, 6 pi 6, 7 pi 6, 8 pi 6. So it counts up really nicely. And so now when I go through and I graph this, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My vertical shift, okay, I have a vertical shift of +4. So this is my new center line. So imagine like my x-axis, everything shifted up 4 spaces. So I'll go ahead and label this. So this is going to be, what is this? pi 6, 2 pi 6, 3 pi 6, this is 4 pi 6, 5 pi 6, 6 pi 6, 7 pi 6, 8 pi 6. So now go through and labeling this. Cosine starts up at the amplitude, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So from this center line, it's going to be here, right, because that is a distance of 3. Then it's going to cross the center line. Then it's going to go below a distance of 3. So from here to here, that's 3. Then it's going to cross the center line again, and it's going to go back up to the amplitude. And so right there is going to be our function. Now describing it, amplitude we said is 3. My period, 2 pi over b, so 2 pi over 3. My horizontal shift, or phase shift, that's the first value in the box. And my vertical shift is going to be 4. My domain is still negative infinity to positive infinity. My range now is from 1 all the way to 7. Number 6. So it says find the implied domain of the function. So we have to remember what our domain restrictions are, and so one of those domain restrictions is dividing by 0. So 6x minus 2 cannot equal 0. The next one is you can't have something in a square root. So I'm going to say the square root, whatever's inside the square root, so 6x minus 2 has to be greater than or equal to 0 because you can't have a negative inside. But I can combine these two statements together. And I can just say 6x minus 2 is greater than 0. Because here it's saying it can't equal it, but this one it's saying it can, so I can combine those two ideas together, which is just 6x minus 2 is greater than 0. Now solve for x. So add 2 to both sides. Divide everything by 6. And I get x is greater than 1/3. Next one is number 8. So it says find f of 0 and f of x equals 0. So if my f of x is 2x squared minus 6, well, f of 0 is just 2 times 0 squared minus 6, and you can simplify that. F of x equals 0 is 0 equals 2x squared minus 6. Add 6 to both sides, and you just get x by itself, so you need to say x equals something. Number 10, to use the pair of functions f and g to find the following values if they exist. So if it says f plus g of 2, it means add the two functions together and then plug in 2. So this is f of 2 plus g of 2. So my f of x is x squared plus 2 plus, because of that plus right there, and then my g of x is negative x minus 4, but now I need to plug in 2. And then you simplify that from there. That's the first part. What if I wanted to do f over g of 0? So it's saying you take your f function, divide it by g, and then plug in 0. So f of 0 over g of 0, which is going to be f of 0 is plugging in 0 into my function, and then g of 0 is plugging in 0 into your function, and then you simplify that.